Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. So today's video is going to be centered around what we're doing with chickens. For those who have been following the channel, we have two flocks. We had two flocks. We had meat birds, the Freedom or Red Rangers, and then we have our 6 laying hens right behind me. So the laying hens right now are staying in a chicken tractor, and we have 3 pastures of different sizes. And depending on which one has got green grass or what's going on, we pull them around in one of those 3 pastures. As of lately, what we've started doing is actually bringing them into the garden when we're in the garden and letting them free range, stir up the dirt and pick out, whatever's left in bugs. It's getting fall right now, so there's not too much in the garden that they can get into, but they do like to get out. So about a month ago, we separated Cookie. He was in with the meat birds, and we put him in with our 6 laying hens. We have 3 cinnamon queen and 3 golden comets. On average, they've been laying about 1 egg a day. It's been getting kind of cool lately during the night, so 29, 30, 31 degrees at night, and then getting back up in the 70s during the day. So they've started to slow down. We're getting 4 or 5 eggs a day now instead of 6, but they're still doing pretty good. So I think Cookie really enjoys being out with the laying hens. To me, he seems a little bit small for this point in his life, and I think being in with the meat birds, where we had him, he was under such competition for the food that every time we fed the meat birds, they would just swarm all over it, and he was kind of left to run around, wait for them to finish, and then, have his meal. So I think he's growing a little bit slower, but now that he's in with the hens, you can definitely see his feathers are starting to grow out. And he's definitely starting to eat more. Hey, it's not polite to talk when other people are talking. But what I want to focus on for the content of this video is going to be the Red Rangers. So what I want to focus on for this video is going to be about the Freedom Rangers or the Red Rangers. So for those who have been following along our videos, you'll know that our plan long term was to try and breed these Red Rangers. So we had 35 of them, and we kept 5. So we kept 4 hens and 1 rooster, and we ended up processing the rest. The 1 rooster and the 4 hens have been in the barn with the 3 Turkins that we got from McMurray Hatchery. He's just not going to stop. So like I said, the intent was to breed these. So the roosters started mounting the hens long before they started laying, but they eventually, about 2 weeks after Doodles, as we named the rooster, after he started mounting the hens, they started laying eggs. So we had 3 nesting boxes in the barn. 1 chicken in particular, 1 hen, she started laying first. What happened with this hen was, and I believe Doodles was such a big rooster. I mean, he was about 11, 12 pounds, and he was a massive chicken. So we ended up processing Doodles today, and he processed at about 7.5 pounds. So it's a good sized rooster. From mounting this one particular hen over and over, she ended up getting puncture wounds underneath her wings, where his feet would hold on. And we had heard of using aprons and stuff like that, other people in the past, but we didn't know that he was mounting them at the time that he started. So it actually took us about 2 days to catch on the fact that he was trying to mate with them. And once we noticed that he was trying to mate with them, the damage had already been done to that particular hen. So unfortunately, I had to put her down, and we basically had to throw that chicken away because the meat was just so torn up that we didn't feel comfortable processing her and using the meat, eating the meat. So we were then down to 3 hens and 1 rooster, and then the 3 Turkins. The Turkins started mounting another one of the hens. Now, 2 of the Turkins were aggressively going after just 1 hen. And the same thing happened to this hen. This hen ended up getting really severe puncture wounds on its side. And then they started mounting a second one, and then she immediately got puncture wounds, and it was happening before we could even figure out what was going on. And at the time, we were already talking about whether or not we wanted to breed these chickens, and I'll get into that one in a little bit. So at some point, at one night, the coyote that's around here started coming around. When it started getting colder, the coyote started coming around here. We put some lighting up in the barn. We put a motion light inside the barn that was very bright in case he came in the barn, and then we put 2 on the outside of the barn. The coyote ended up getting 2 of the turkeys in one night. So he ended up killing them and actually taking them. So the flock was down to 3 hens, 1 rooster, and 1 turkey. And we decided at this point that we were just going to process all the birds, and once we processed them, figure out whether or not we wanted to keep the meat. So we did that today. I processed the 3 hens and the 1 rooster, and there's 1 turkey still in the barn. I'm not sure what to do with him quite yet because he's so small that it's not even worth processing at this point. But 2 out of the 3 hens that we processed had pretty severe cuts and puncture wounds on them. So we ended up just throwing those chickens away. I don't know enough yet, and my wife doesn't know enough yet, and we couldn't find enough good research as to whether or not those chickens were safe to eat. You know, I'll take the loss. I'll err on the side of caution, and we just got rid of those hens. So the rooster and the 1 hen we kept, we ended up processing those, and we actually butchered those chickens right after we plucked them. That way we're just freezing the meat and not the whole carcass, because we still have about 25 birds left in the freezer. So overall, hindsight being 2020, I really wish we had just culled all the birds in one shot and done the 5 that we kept that one day that we processed the rest. One of the things we started noticing when the hens started laying was most of the eggs were double yolk. Now, I would say 3/5 of the eggs were double yolk, about 1/5 of the eggs were normal, and then 1/5 of the eggs would just be really small. I mean, smaller than a golf ball, besides one of those large marbles you will see. And I think at that point, we really, between the puncture wounds happening on the hens, the size of the chickens, the fact that these chickens just sat in the barn all day. I mean, they had access to a run outside in grass, and they couldn't care less. They're so much different than the hens we have. It's incredible. I have kind of, mixed feelings about our experiment. It's an experiment. It can go either way. I mean, scientific experiments, or in our case, experiment in learning how to deal with the chickens. It was a 50-50 shot whether or not you could breed the Red Rangers. Now, I had seen people on YouTube, and we've read about people that had success, and then we had people that said the Red Ranger is a hybrid. You can't breed a hybrid rooster with a hybrid hen and get a true Freedom Ranger or Red Ranger chicken. So we knew we weren't going to get a true chicken. We were okay with that, and we knew that there was a chance that the eggs were going to be all over the place. But once we started getting a feel for really what the chickens were going to be providing for eggs and whether or not that was going to be sustainable, we wanted a flock of chickens that we could either incubate the fertilized eggs, or we would have a hen that went broody and she could rear the chicks on her own. We just didn't see that happening. So today was the day we got rid of all the chickens. My advice to anybody looking to breed the Red Ranger or the Freedom Ranger is I would think long and hard about it. If your goal is to be sustainable, I just don't think that using Red Rangers is a good path to go down. So it is what it is. People can make up their own decisions. We've made up ours. I think today, since it's getting to be the end of October, a lot of the hatcheries are starting to really slow down on shipping chickens. Typically, end of October till February, nobody ships chickens because it's just so cold. So we'll probably be ordering chickens either tonight or tomorrow, and I believe that we are going to go with Buff Orpingtons. Now, Cookie's a blue Orpington, so we can breed him with those if we want, or we can buy a rooster. I'm not sure what we're going to do yet. I think we'll talk about that tonight, my wife and I, but I think what will end up happening is, if I had to guess, is we'll get a Buff Orpington rooster. We're gonna leave Cookie in here. The downside of the Buff Orpington is they take so much longer to mature, and they take a lot longer to start laying than these typical chickens do. But they're a dual purpose breed, so they will lay 200 eggs a year. You can get, you know, good egg quantity out of them, and they can still get, you know, a 7-8 pound live weight chicken. So you're talking, you know, 5 to 7 pound between a hen or a rooster, a 5 to 7 pound dressed chicken out of the Buff Orpington. You're not going to get as much breast meat. I mean, it's not going to be substantial like a Red Ranger or one of these genetically modified chickens that you see. But using a breed like the Buff Orpington is a long-term, more sustainable plan than, you know, what we tried to do. So, you know, that's an update on the chickens. I think we're doing about as well as I expected to do with the chickens. The hens are laying, you know, pretty solid. We have found one source to sell our eggs, and we've been giving them to the neighbors who really enjoy the eggs, and, you know, we've been eating a lot. So these girls, the Golden Comets and the Cinnamon Queens, they're very gentle. I mean, they're such a good bird. They're beautiful birds. You know, they're so much different than the meat birds were. They're so much smaller, and their personalities are just so much different. It's incredible. You getting frisky? Are you getting frisky with her? Huh? And yes, Cookie has started breeding the Cinnamon Queen and the Golden Comets. I really think that a cross between this Blue Orpington rooster and the Golden Comets would be something to see. For some reason, I think that color pattern would be really cool. So I don't know, maybe we'll incubate some of those eggs in the future. So that's gonna be it for today's video, guys. I'm gonna try and keep this one nice and short and sweet. I'd like to hear other people's comments or suggestions or, you know, concerns about the Buff Orpington. I think we narrowed it down to 2 breeds, the Delaware and the Buff Orpington, and it just seems like the Delaware doesn't tend to go broody and would be less, you know, sustainable than the Buff Orpington. So that's the reason we're looking at, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. As always, guys, thank you for joining me today. If you wouldn't mind hitting that like button, subscribe if you haven't, and as always, check our Facebook page out at Meadow Green Homesteading. We post daily content on there. My wife and I both post daily content about what we're working on. Right now I'm doing a lot of work on the fence lines around here because it's nice out. She's been doing a lot of work in the garden. We had a second rotation of crops come through there. So, you know, she's got a beautiful flower garden. She posts pictures of that. We post pictures of how we're processing vegetables, canning, freezing, vacuum sealing, all that fun stuff. As always, if you wouldn't mind, please hit that like button, consider subscribing, and I'll see you next time.